listening to the Tricorder transmissions.
Shore Leave, episode 31, DragonCon for Beginners.
Just what the doctor ordered. Right, doctor? I couldn't have prescribed better.
You have once again beamed down for Shore Leave, your Star Trek Convention Community Podcast. This is episode 31, and we are talking DragonCon for Beginners. So here alongside me is none other than the best co-host in the galaxy, the wonderful Heather Barker.
Hi, how are you doing?
Wonderful. How are you? We've been together an awful lot in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about a convention I've never been to, but I've heard a lot about.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I have friends here from Jersey who've been there and some other remote friends who've been there, but I've never actually been there. I've been to Atlanta, but never been to DragonCon. So this is pretty cool. So we've got two new guests tonight here who are going to be with us to discuss DragonCon. First up is Sue Kay, co-host of the Great Women at Warp podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we are too. This is going to be a lot of fun. And finally, our second new guest is the co-host of the RevCast podcast, Mr. Gary Mitchel.
Pleasure to be here, sir.
Very, very nice to have you as well. So you guys are going to be helping us talk about DragonCon for Beginners. I thought we could start out with maybe some bits about the two of you and your attendance at DragonCon. Gary, do you have some special functions there you want to talk about?
Yes, I am, along with Joe Crow, the co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics track at DragonCon. And so for that, I should break down a little bit about what that means. DragonCon is unlike a lot of other conventions where they divide the programming up into what they call tracks. There's a Star Trek track, there is a Star Wars track, there is a alternate history track. There are about 7,000 tracks.
Or between 35 and 40.
Yeah. Numbers may waver there. But so if you're only into, like, say, Star Trek, you could go to DragonCon, spend your entire time in the Star Trek room, see the Star Trek guests, and not deal with anything else. But that would be missing the point of DragonCon. So my track, most of the track titles are fairly self-explanatory. Is that alternate history, Star Wars, American Sci-Fi Media, British track. My track is American Sci-Fi Classics, which means anything that's over 20 years old, produced by usually American companies, but we do grab British stuff, although the British track tends to hold on to that and so forth, is pretty much our bailiwick. So we only have from like from the year 2000 back to the beginning of time.
I wish I was able to come for this stuff. So some of this sounds really cool. I have no experience with the Star Trek track, but I would love to actually hear a little bit more about that too, if you guys had some more information. Sue, do you have any special things that you're doing for DragonCon? Or
I guess first I'll say I'm a DragonCon Eternal member. What that means is several years ago, I gave them a lot of money, and I will have a pass, a full convention pass every year for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow.
That's what happens when you find your people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But every year that price goes up. There have been lots of rumors about, like, is DragonCon trying to phase this out? So far in its history, DragonCon has not capped attendance, but if they ever do, I know I'm guaranteed a ticket. Unlike some other conventions that tend to happen on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But for the last several years as well, I have been a panelist at DragonCon and working with people like Gary and other track directors. And a couple years ago, some friends and I started the DragonCon Newbies group. It started with Kevin Batchelder, who, podcast listeners in general might know Kevin's voice because he's on almost all of the podcasts. And it was just, he had a bunch of friends who were going to con for the first time and put them in a group to answer all their questions at once. The group continued to grow. This year, I think it's just surpassed 3,000 members.
Wow.
And a few years ago, the con gave us the ability to do events for newbies. So in addition to having a group where we answer questions and give tips throughout the year, at the convention, on Thursday night, we do walking tours because the convention is in 5 hotels and 2
Right.
other buildings as well called the America's Mart. So we do walking tours for 2.5 hours with groups going out about every 5 minutes. And then we do a newbies Q&A after that. And then the very first panel on the main programming track Friday morning is also a newbies Q&A that we do. And for the first time this year, I'm also listed as an attending professional. So I am in the app and searchable, and you can find my 17 panels this year
Oh my
Oh
god.
my
in the app.
Wow, that sounds incredibly impressive. I mean, I mean, just thinking of some general things. I mean, just picking up some of the stuff that you guys were talking about. So, 35 to 40 different tracks, and each of which has its own schedule, I assume. So, it sounds like there's a lot of content. So, uh, I guess we could start out talking some general stuff. I mean, do you guys have any advice on how somebody who's never been to this con could tackle that kind of schedule and the amount of content that's there? I mean, obviously, you can't hit everything, right?
You definitely, it's not possible to hit everything. So yeah, each of the tracks programs the entire convention, and we're not at a convention center, so it goes 24 hours a day.
Mm.
Panels usually run from about 10 a.m. to 11:30 or 12.
Wow.
But then there are parties and dances and other game shows and other track events. But there's no ending to the floor to the floor. Once the convention begins, it goes until Monday afternoon.
Yeah. And the convention may actually have started today. People are showing up earlier every year.
Yeah.
Con creep happens there too.
Oh, yes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the convention officially starts on Friday at 10 a.m. If you ask somebody in charge, that's what they'll tell you. But like I said, there are some official events happening on Thursday night. Even a few years ago, I was flying in Thursday morning. I'm going in Wednesday morning this year.
Yep.
So, but in terms of tackling the schedule, the most effective way I found, especially now thanks to the app that DragonCon has had out in the last few years, there are so many different ways to search the information. What I personally do is I load up the panels that I'm on first, obviously. That doesn't apply to everybody, but what does apply to everybody is the first thing I do after that is I go and look through the guest list.
Mhm.
You can click on a guest name in the app. It'll show you all of the events that guest is doing. I'll add whatever I want to see for each of those like top priority guests for me to my schedule. Then I go back and I look track by track. So I'll go through the classics track and see if there's anything I want to hit there. And I'll go through the current American sci-fi track, and I'll go through the Brit track and just add things to my schedule without any notion of like, well, there's a conflict. Don't worry about that. Once you've gone through all the programming, that's when you look at the schedule and see how many conflicts you have. If there are more than 3 things in a programming slot, I know that sounds crazy, but there's more than 3, I pare it down to at least 3.
Mhm.
If there's less than 3, I leave it. And the big reason for that is that DragonCon is sprawling. It's a huge event.
Yeah.
So you might think that you absolutely want to go see, whatever's happening in the Trek track, but you might be in the farthest hotel from that event. So depending on how you're feeling, whether you've eaten, how hot it is outside, you might actually want to find something in the hotel that you're in.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder that you have options.
Yeah, especially because I'd like to point out, because one of the things about the planning for DragonCon is there are 2 different types of events. There are the celebrity events, so you may want to go to a panel that, say, Patrick Stewart's talking on. When you may end up getting there and seeing that the line is so long, you're like, I'm not going to deal with that, so I'll go see one of my alternates.
Mm-hmm. Do they guarantee a seat, like if you're in line, or is there a
No.
chance that you won't make it in?
There is a chance that you won't make it in, but there is also, I think, a really great line policy. The official policy at DragonCon is that a line for a panel can't start forming until the previous panel has been loaded in.
Okay.
So you are never going to be in line for more than an hour and a half.
That's awesome.
And they clear the whole room before.
Yes, the
next
rooms are
panel, right? You
cleared
can't just
after
squat.
every panel.
Okay,
Exactly.
Yeah.
No squatting. Okay, cool.
No squatting. And
Okay.
I mean, that is so that you can see as much as you possibly can, because who really wants to spend all day in one room when you're there for a panel at 4 p.m.
Yeah, certainly. Since we're talking about the schedule and we kind of skipped over the dates for the convention, I just wanted to emphasize that it's every Labor Day weekend. So this year it's September 1st through September 4th in downtown Atlanta, for those who didn't pick that up. So it's hot and humid and lots of walking. But it sounds like, unlike other conventions that we know, the schedule for DragonCon comes out pretty well in advance, is what I'm gathering.
It depends on what you mean by in advance, but the two things about the schedule you have to keep in mind is, yes, the actual, if you're doing the app dropped yesterday, so the schedule is out. However, much like the future, in flux the schedule is.
It's so funny that you say that it comes out well in advance, because in the DragonCon groups, all we hear starting in like May or June is, when is the schedule going to be out? I want to plan this. When is the schedule going to be out?
Yeah.
And the veterans say, 7 to 10 days before the con. And this year it was, I think, 8 days if you don't count Thursday.
Okay, so it is pretty similar with STLV, where you don't really get it until right beforehand, which can be difficult, but I think that those tips are pretty good tips on what to expect size-wise, and then how to pare down what you want to see, and to certainly take into consideration that you'll be walking back and forth a lot. One of our friends mentioned that, and like his number one tip would be to wear comfortable shoes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and
I made the mistake when you're wearing shoes I bought like the week before.
Oh,
ouch.
Yep.
It was like the Saturday. I was like, why do my feet hurt so much?
Oh. Yeah, and when I'm cosplaying, I actually keep a pair of flip-flops in my bag.
Yep.
So if I have to get somewhere quickly, I'm in flip-flops, get to the next hotel, and I can put my real shoes back on once I'm there.
That's smart thinking. So the events that start the night previous, are those, I think you said some of those were official events. So are those on the schedule that people would know about, or are they events that someone needs to join a group to find out about?
No, those are definitely in the schedule.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, they're on the main programming track.
Although there are different private groups that will meet up, like there's different like cigar groups or particular niche groups of fans who will do their own events, but those are not official. Those are, hey, we're going to meet at this bar in the hotel, one of the hotels.
So are those events that you'll find on Facebook?
Yes.
Usually, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Alrighty.
And there's even a group that collects events, unofficial events.
Oh, cool.
So it's like the DragonCon parties group, I think it's called. So people, all it is people just posting their non-official events in that group.
Yeah, and there's an actual DragonCon events group for the official events, so you don't miss any of those either.
And real quick, I just want to jump back to the lines, because we went so quickly. Like I said, you're never going to be in line more than 90 minutes for a panel. But in my personal experience, there's so much stuff going on, and the ballrooms are so big. I have never gotten in a line with at least 30 minutes before and not gotten in the room. So if you're in a panel and you want to go to a panel in the next room right after, we always have a 30-minute walking break between panels. So there'll be a 1 to 2 session and then a 2:30 to 3:30.
Nice.
So if you're in the 1 to 2, you leave right at 2, plop yourself on the back of that line. Chances are good you're going to get in for that 2:30 panel.
And the final bit about missing and seeing everything is, if you manage to get into one of the host hotels, or if you buy the streaming membership, which now I will have to explain this a little bit, but
that's okay. We're interested in what types of membership or tickets there are. So that's a great subject.
All right. So in the host hotels, they have what's called DragonConTV, which started a few years ago. And it's one of the best components of the con, in my opinion. They do parody music videos. They show little fan films, little interstitials in the old style, the old Adult Swim, the white text on the black background. And then during the day, they actually have a lot of the panels that they broadcast on DragonConTV. I saw a Star Trek panel in my room one time.
Yep.
And they started last year. It was only in the host hotels up until last year. And last year they started the streaming DragonConTV. And you had to be an attendee, and it cost $10 extra. But no matter where you were, up to 30 days after the convention, you could watch DragonCon TV whenever you wanted online. And this year they've announced a streaming only membership, which is $30.
I think they're calling it a virtual membership.
Yeah, and it will let you watch, I think up to they just did the first episode of DragonCon TV for the year, late night DragonCon. They said there was going to be something like 600 hours of programming.
Wow.
They're the first event every morning, I think except Friday, is called the DragonCon Late Show. And I think it's at 9:30. It's either 9 or 9:30. And they go over the changes in the schedule and they broadcast it on Dragon TV. And they call it the Late Show because if you're up at 9:30 at DragonCon, you're still up.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people, and that part of the fight for getting a host hotel room has been people trying to get DragonCon TV. So hopefully having the streaming will take some of that pressure off.
Yeah, and that's the thing
too. It'll happen, but I hope.
Many of those panels that are in the large ballrooms, the ones that everybody wants to get into, are broadcast in real time on DragonCon TV, but also repeated overnight, later in the weekend. So there have been times, there was a few years ago, the entire Battlestar Galactica cast was at DragonCon, and I was not there at least 30 minutes ahead of time. I knew looking at the line that I wasn't going to make it into that room. So I hopped over to the food court, got myself lunch, went upstairs to my hotel room, and watched it on TV as it was happening.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's cool. So before we move on to other topics, I want to just quickly, for people who've never been to DragonCon, and you're saying that it's spread across many different hotels, and I went to the DragonCon site and I looked at, there's a whole huge scrolling list of hotels that you could possibly stay in. Can you guys give us a sense of scale? Like if you're staying at a hotel that may be a little bit further away, how much more walking can you expect? I mean, I know there's downtown and there's midtown. Can you give us a sense of scale of what people might be expecting, depending on where they're staying?
Sure. Once you're on, I guess you can call it campus, the 5 hotels are within a 3-block radius of each other.
Okay, that's pretty.
Not even radius, diameter, really. Everything is within 3 blocks of everything else, and maybe another block to get to the America's Mart where the dealers' rooms are. So, once you are there, you're there, and I've gotten from the farthest point to the other farthest point with my Times Square walking in like 8 minutes. But I know not everybody does.
That's Manhattan walking, people. That's pretty quick pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The other part of it is dealing with the mass of humanity, because sometimes it's a little denser than others.
Yeah.
Right. And the Manhattan walking comes in handy there as well. The hardest part if you're staying at an overflow hotel is just getting to the Central Con area. Some of them are really close and they're right next door. They're just not an official host hotel yet because no programming happens there.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away, out by the airport. For the official overflow hotels that are farther away, DragonCon runs a shuttle, but it is, you got to be first on it because it's going to get crowded. And once you are at the con, you're there all day because it's not easy to go back to your room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Unless if you're not staying in one of the host hotels, pretty much plan it being at the host hotels once you get there for the whole day. But if you're in them, even then can be tricky because the elevator situation, depending on which hotel, is also can be problematic.
Yeah.
And don't drive to the con. Just don't do it.
Yeah. You won't find a place to park. You won't.
So I've seen some of my friends when it's hotel time, it's similar to San Diego Comic-Con where it's like a rush to get a room. So how far in advance can you attempt to book a room at one of the host hotels?
It depends on what hotel you're in and what your status is for the current year. So some of the hotels have what we refer to as legacy rooms, which means that you have a reservation for this year, you have first dibs on reservations for next year.
Right.
Although usually the difficult situation of that for some people is that means paying for your hotel room for next year at con.
Yeah.
Or at least the deposit.
It depends on the hotel. Some only ask for the first night, some ask for the entire.
Yeah, but usually if a hotel does legacy rooms, you are booking the next year's room at check-in for the current year's event. So a little bit more than a year in advance. If you don't have a legacy room, I would say that host hotel booking is usually in early October, but it changes every year.
Is that popular? You think a lot of people do that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure. I think for a lot of people who go every year, once you get a host hotel room, you don't give it up.
Yeah.
It's like a rent-controlled apartment.
Nice.
So what's the likelihood of someone like me, if I'm going for my first time, do I have any chance of getting a room at one of those host hotels?
It depends on how far in advance you're trying to do it and if you're willing to room share.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, if you mean like going on to the res website as soon as stuff goes on sale and you're sitting there and you're ready to go, you have as good a chance as anybody else who doesn't have a legacy room.
I've seen the hotel rooms sell out within 8 minutes.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Wow. Do they cap legacy rooms in any way, or is that just, can anybody just get one if they had one the previous year?
It depends on the hotel. Some years you were only given the legacy room, not given, but offered the legacy room if you checked out by a certain time.
Oh wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's because they had like the hotel in question had another big event checking in that day. So they wanted to get as many rooms cleaned as possible before a
Yeah.
check-in time.
Yeah, makes sense.
So it all, and in fact, I have not seen any announcements from any of the host hotels this year confirming that they will be doing that again. So it could all be going away.
Oh wow.
That's just what's happened in previous years.
Mm.
So I also noticed that looking at the long list of hotels, most of them seem to come in at over $200 a night. Is that pretty much the average?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that is con rate. And the other thing is, if you're willing to pay more, you can get usually a room in the host hotels in advance, but you're going to be paying normal room rate. And in the Marriott, that's around $600 a night.
Holy.
Right. I think it's important to remember that this is the middle of the city in Atlanta.
Mm.
It's not only a holiday weekend, it's a convention weekend, and it's a big college football weekend.
Oh, wow.
Ah.
Yeah.
So-
there are 2 major games this weekend or that weekend.
I think so.
Yeah. I'm not a football guy. I couldn't tell you. Yeah. So there are also, that's been an issue sometimes where some of the football people will find out about the DragonCon rate and try to get rooms because they want to get there that weekend for the game.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and that caused issues in the past where the convention used to be open and anybody could come and wander around the hotel, and there would be a lot of sightseers, to be polite.
Mhm.
And now to get into the con hotels, you have to either have a room key or a badge.
Nice.
And your room key only gets you into the hotel that key is valid for.
Oh, that
Yeah.
makes sense too.
Yeah.
Makes sense too. So if someone was trying to try to do this on a budget hotel wise and tried to stay a little further away, is there public transport options or maybe like Uber and Lyft options to get you closer from your longer distance hotel?
Yeah, there are Uber and Lyft. There is some public transportation. Atlanta's public transportation isn't the best. But if you stay in the right places, you can either get on what they call the MARTA,
Mhm.
which is they have a bus system and there's a MARTA train line. And if you're flying into Atlanta, the MARTA train line is at the airport and goes right to the where the host hotels are.
Nice.
So if you don't have a lot of luggage or feel like playing with your luggage, you can actually get to the hotel from the airport very inexpensively.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for a budget hotel, your best bet really is to book one of the airport hotels. Because in that case, many of those hotels have shuttles to the airport where you can get on the MARTA, and the Peachtree station is right underneath the host hotels.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yes.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
The main thing to keep in mind is that the Atlanta MARTA is not open 24 hours. It shuts down around midnight.
So if you're out late, you're going to be taking a cab back.
Yeah.
Cab prices are pretty high, like most major cities, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I would Uber or Lyft, whatever your preference is.
Okay.
All right.
And I would assume they're probably pretty busy too with the big crowds, so it might be tougher to get one of those cars too. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and the big trick is also Saturday morning, because Saturday morning is the DragonCon parade, and it shuts down a good section of the area around the convention. And if you get caught in that, you're either going to get caught in a traffic jam, or you're not going to be able to cross the street, because that's one of the only issues that I have with the parade is that it cuts through where one of the host hotels is. So if you try to leave from that hotel during the parade to the others, you really have to go around your elbow to get to your thumb.
Yeah. Yeah. That's usually my advice for people about watching the parade is that if you don't want to watch it, but you want to be on the other side of the street from where you're staying, you have to get over there by 8 or 8:30.
Yeah.
If you are watching the parade, know which side of the street you want to be on when it's over.
And I've heard that it's nice to be on the side that's in the shade.
Yes.
Well, always.
Yeah. This is Atlanta. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid.
Yeah. I remember when I was there a few years ago for a business trip, it was unbelievable. It was hotter than I would have imagined that it was, because people were joking around calling it Hotlanta, and I thought it was just a joke, but it's really bad down there. So, I mean, while we're on the subject of Atlanta and the heat, obviously hydration, just like at other long conventions, is also something that we'd recommend, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do they provide any sort of hydration stations or misting stations there?
There's no misting station that I'm aware of, but they're really great about having water stations. All of the big ballrooms definitely have a few water stations in them, including with cups, and they're maintained throughout the convention. Most of the smaller rooms, the track rooms and the smaller panel rooms, will have a water cooler in the room. If they don't, there's usually one in the hallway, so several rooms share it.
Yeah, it's get yourself a water bottle. You don't have to, because like you said, most of them do have cups. But if you bring yourself at least one, if not two water bottles, because I invariably lose one. And so you can stay hydrated. But there are also, the people selling you your $6 can of Coke if you get desperate.
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
Or, $16 bottle of water.
You exaggerate.
Just a little.
Only a bit.
A little. So I had a question. We talked about the legacy membership, but with the rest of the tickets, can you explain what if there's a ticket tiers, basic prices, and when tickets go on sale?
So there's no tiered membership at DragonCon.
Okay.
Everybody gets the same thing. Even me with my Eternal badge, I have all the same access as somebody who walks up and buys the ticket the day of the show.
Mm-hmm.
There's no special treatment involved in that.
Right.
The pricing with DragonCon is that it goes up as the convention gets closer. So I believe this year tickets, badges or memberships technically go on sale for next year during the current year's convention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this year they started at either $80 or $85. That's it for the entire convention.
Wow, that's awesome.
Great.
Right. So the cost of the con is low. It's the cost of the hotel rooms that get you at this one.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of STLV.
Now, and I think that is actually, though, a price jump, because I think last year, if you bought at the convention, which is the cheapest time to buy, last year I think it was like $65 at con.
No, that was a few years ago.
That was I haven't bought a badge in a while. I've been busy.
Yeah. It was either 80 or 85 last year. They've already announced that this year, if you buy next year's at the convention, it'll be 85.
Okay.
And every few months the price goes up. They give you plenty of warning. It's like, we're changing it next week. We're changing it in 5 days, And I think at the door it's $165. Does that sound right?
Yeah, if you were to buy your ticket right now for this year, it'd be $160, and then it'll be $165 at the door.
Okay. Can you buy daily passes or just the weekend passes?
Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
This year is the first time they're selling a Thursday pass, because they're actually requiring a badge for the official Thursday night events.
Right.
This is the first year they're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can buy a Friday, you can buy a Saturday, you can buy a Saturday and Sunday, or Sunday by itself, or a Monday.
Okay, lots of options. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also why you'll see the crowd really thicken up on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Saturday is for sure the busiest day, not only because of the parade, but just it's sometimes it's difficult to even get to a restroom down the hall.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because there are just so many people. The expected attendance this year is 82,000 people.
Ah.
Yeah, mind you, it's spread across 5 different hotels.
Yeah.
And the dealer's room buildings, but it's still packed. If you go on to Facebook or online, you can find pictures of the crowds, and they give you a good idea.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting. You keep mentioning the dealers buildings. So we have the 5 main buildings and then the 2 like merchandise marts. And my understanding is that there's like each of those 2 spaces are different. Like one is kind of an art vendors area, and then the other one is maybe more memorabilia collectibles.
Yeah, kind of. It's a weird little hybrid thing because there is this what your standard dealer's room stuff. Buy your lightsabers, buy your dice, buy your artisanal Harry Potter wands. There's all those people, posters, miniatures, figures, whatever you want to buy, it's there.
Yeah.
And then there is the art show, which is adjacent to it, usually on a different floor.
Okay.
And then they also have started putting the comic book creators and giving them tables there. So if there is any particular comic book writer or artist you want to meet, their table will be there. And they'll be doing sketchings and signings and whatever. And then there's also the gaming area, which is where all the board gamers, tabletop gamers, role-playing, video games, they actually set up arcades, pinball machines.
Wow.
It's if there's something you want to do, it's at the con, and they tend to group all those people together. There are some people who show up on Thursday, they go to the gaming area, they break out their magic decks, and you don't see them till Monday.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. So the vendors areas, obviously it's the same tickets that get you into everywhere. I would imagine, since it's difficult to get back and forth to your hotel rooms, carrying some sort of a bag would be advisable. Do you guys have any thoughts on, if someone is coming for the first time, what kind of a bag they should bring with them? Is there anything that you think would be more appropriate than others?
Especially at this convention, I am very anti-backpack. And the reason for that is that most people don't have any spatial awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a backpack on, something catches your eye that's shiny and you turn quick, you can take somebody out. Probably at DragonCon, a couple somebodies.
Multiples.
Yeah, especially short somebodies.
Yeah. So, I highly recommend. I realize that for some people with like back injuries or similar, that backpacks are much more comfortable. In that case, just be aware of your surroundings. But, if you can, I recommend some kind of crossbody. And I have even been known, if I'm like carrying around a costume to change costumes during the day, to just use one of those like reusable grocery bags.
Oh,
yeah.
You can carry it low because you're taking up, a smaller footprint when you can elongate what you're carrying rather than make it stick out from you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you're buying at the dealer's room, most people will offer some sort of bag. Those We Love Fine gigantic body bags are pretty popular.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, the bag I carry and like to use is I have the Think Geek bag of holding convention edition, which is the narrow. And because I can throw in all my stuff that I need in there. And it's got 2 side pockets, one for your water bottle and one that's actually open at both ends. So if you buy a poster tube or a lightsaber, you can stuff it in there.
Oh, very cool. We'll have to dig up a link to that one and post it in the show notes. What about shipping? Is there shipping options? Is there some place that's close by? And if you buy,
you wouldn't believe the shipping that goes on.
Yeah, it took a minute to realize what exactly you meant.
There is a Federal Express in every hotel.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
However, the last day of the convention is Labor Day.
Yeah.
So they are closed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, if you want to send something home in a box or a tube, especially a tube, those are usually sold out at the Federal Express by Saturday.
Yeah.
So either bring your own tube or be ready to get there. Make that one of the first places you stop to shop.
Or make a friend with a trusted local.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sue wouldn't know anything about that. Yeah, you can also ship to the hotel if you have a reservation there. So if you are coming in with a huge chunk of cosplay, you don't want to trust the baggage handlers, you can ship it ahead. And I have personally, when I was living in Seattle, shipped stuff home from the convention because I didn't want to put it on the airplane.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a good option. Especially if you buy a ton of stuff. I mean, you can probably buy a box there and ship a bunch of stuff home in one shot.
Yeah. One of the things I recommend to people, especially if they plan on doing a lot of shopping, is to pack like a soft-sided duffel your suitcase that you're bringing, and then put your laundry in that on your way back and put the stuff you bought in your real luggage, and you have a better chance of getting it home safe.
That's a great call.
That's actually just a standard, a good travel tip in general. Have your second bag to put your laundry in.
Yep. I did that this year at STLV. Worked out nicely.
So any other advice for the vendors areas before we move on to anything else, you guys?
The vendors areas get very, very crowded. And they're, especially on Saturday and Sunday, the buildings have been shut down before, meaning the fire marshal said nobody else can come in until this many people leave. So they're not, evacuating, but they are shutting the entrances for a while. So, I mean, the best time to go is during the parade.
Yep.
And I would say late on Monday. The problem with late on Monday is that, of course, what you wanted might be sold out. But the advantage is what you buy, the vendors don't have to ship home. So you're more likely to get a deal.
Yep.
Definitely. That's pretty much, but as I've seen the line to get in go up the block and around the block and going, I'm not going this year.
Oh, wow. So that means we're going to be waiting outside to get into the vendors.
Yes. Yeah. You are waiting outside in the heat.
In the heat. Okay.
Yes.
So be prepared for that, people.
And just to give everybody a little bit of heads up, I decided to actually look at the weather. And next year, or the next weekend during DragonCon, it's going to be an average of 86 degrees every day.
Okay. That's pretty warm.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the weather and the humidity, do we have any talk about a little bit of cosplay tips and advice for people who may think about doing some cosplay at DragonCon?
Oh boy.
Sue, you do more cosplay than I do.
And I don't follow my own advice either. Somehow I always end up with outerwear. And but short sleeves if you can. I mean, that's really all you can do. Take breaks, hydrate, make sure, especially if you're not used to heat, if you're corseted in any way, don't tie it too tight. You don't want to faint. But it's also important to note that I tend to run warm, so this doesn't affect me as much. But air conditioning in Atlanta has two settings, off and Arctic.
Yeah.
And when there are several thousand people in a room, it's not going to feel Arctic. But if you're at a smaller event where there might be, 50 to 100, it might. Yeah. So some people, even though it's going to be 86 degrees and ridiculously humid, are still going to be walking around with a sweater because it could get cold in the panel rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can definitely vouch for that. From our panel room, it gets cold. But yeah, it's like it's kind of interesting because you show up on Wednesday or Thursday and you're in the hotel in the main lobby and you're like, wow, it's air conditioned. And then Friday happens.
Yeah.
And the air conditioner is still blowing full steam because every now and then you'll walk under the vent and go, ooh. But then it's gone again.
Yep.
So very similar to STLV temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then on Monday, the air conditioning's back.
Interesting. So what about the weapons policy? I'm sure they must have a pretty robust weapons policy for a convention of this size.
Yes. I think the biggest or most all-encompassing phrase that they use is that anything that looks like a real weapon will be treated like a real weapon. So I know that you can find the details definitely on the website, and we posted them recently in the newbies group. But anything that is a firearm must absolutely have the orange tip and be piece bonded with the trigger pulled all the way back.
All bladed weapons have to be piece bound.
Any bows cannot be strung. If you really want to have something for pictures, you can use a piece of yarn, but there can be no tension. I know that. Bats are allowed, but not bats with spikes or barbed wire. Wolverine claws have to be made out of foam.
Wow.
I think, no metal. Because of the nature of this con and its reputation, I guess, for cosplay, there are a lot of very specific weapons policy rules, but I think the general thing is that if you have any doubt that someone could mistake it for a real weapon or that it could hurt somebody, stop by security and get their beat on it. And security is has an office in the most central of the hotels in the Marriott.
Cool. And I assume that there's a checkpoint when you enter any of the hotels where they check your weapon.
Yes. They check for weapons, check for badges, and it's both the hotels. There is the convention volunteer security and hired private security.
Okay.
And Atlanta PD.
Wow.
Yes.
Nice.
Okay. They have a bag check as well, I would assume.
Not so much.
Yeah, I've never had my bag checked, actually.
No. So, and obviously no projectile weapons, even if they're Nerf type things or anything like
Correct.
that. No
Yep.
spray, string, any of that.
No
kind
silly
of stuff.
string. Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. Gotcha.
Yeah, nothing that can actually fire anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know the weapons policies for a lot of conventions are different and evolving. So just wanted to make sure we hit many of those points as possible. And
For sure.
I was also going to touch on, since we're talking about policies, DragonCon also has a strong harassment policy, which makes me very happy.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about that policy and what they do to advertise it?
I know they have it up on the website.
Yeah, and I believe it is in part printed on the back of the badge as well.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
oh, nice.
Yeah, that's one of the things the convention actually stresses is that you don't have a ticket, you have a membership.
Yes.
And your membership can be revoked at any time.
Yeah, and I would say it's not, a standard anti-harassment policy, but it's very similar to the one that a lot of conventions are putting into place right now. There is a whole section on cosplay not being consent.
Yep.
There is a section on how to report issues, on phone numbers to call, on what is and is not allowed.
I've actually pulled up the convention has a whole set of policies about, what behavior is acceptable, what isn't.
Nice.
The costume rules, age is about the policy number 7 covers specifically the harassment, and it says harassment of any kind, including physically or verbally threatening, annoying, unwelcome attentions, stalking, pushing, shoving, or use of physical force, which in any way creates a disturbance that is disruptive or dangerous, as well as any boisterous, lewd, or generally offensive behavior of language, using sexually explicit or offensive language or conduct, or profanity, obscene gestures, or racial, religious, or ethnic slurs will be considered harassment.
Woohoo.
Wow, good.
If people tell you no, your business with them is done. If you continue to attempt to have contact with these people, you may be removed from the premises and your membership revoked. Remember, no means no, stop means stop, go away means go away. Costuming is not consent.
That's excellent.
Policy, yeah.
Overall, I tend to find that with my experience, and I do cosplay at the few conventions that I go to, I've had pretty positive experiences overall. How do you guys feel about DragonCon? Have you dealt with any harassment yourselves there?
I have not dealt with any because of my costuming, but I have dealt with some people who just want to be difficult or argue or even overhear a conversation and want to just argue about it, to get in your face, to make a comment, because there are some people who are like that, especially in a culture, that DragonCon is often referred to as nerdy gras, right? So there are some people who go to this con to spend the weekend drinking.
Yeah.
And that's their right, but that sometimes makes them not as aware of the people around them. So that I have occasionally had some interactions like that, but nothing for me that has ever really escalated. I have heard stories, though, that some people have had some issues, but in all of those cases, security is called and a volunteer is right there, and the situation is dealt with very, very quickly.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've seen some things happen. Actually, one of my best DragonCon friends I made was helping her get away from a few drunk guys. And so, unfortunately, it does and can happen. But on the other hand, of all the conventions I've been to, DragonCon really does have a we're all nerd family vibe, and a lot of people will step up.
Oh, good.
That's great. Yeah.
DragonCon has an atmosphere unlike really any other convention that I've been to. And it's something we haven't really talked much about yet, but I think that's because it is a fan-run convention. Things like STLV or San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con, those are all industry conventions. And they are there. You are paying money to go there and be marketed to. Honestly, that's what's happening. At DragonCon, you have fan volunteers who are organizing this whole thing. I think DragonCon employs 3 or 4 people year round. Everybody else, the thousands of volunteers who make this happen, are just that. They're all volunteers.
Yeah.
And every policy that's in place, every action that they take is really meant to improve the fan experience at this convention.
And that says a lot that there's, such a great anti-harassment policy at a convention like this versus another convention that we know that really doesn't have one at all. I mean, having a little blurb on a website that's not even connected to the actual convention, you see the benefit of having that fan-run convention and an emphasis on making the experience better for fans.
Yeah. Everybody who's there who is a volunteer is to have a good time and make sure everybody else does as well. That's why I volunteer. Is I'm putting on a show and I want everybody to be a good time. And that also does mean sometimes interfering with people who are trying to make other people's good time not as good.
Yeah. Part of those policies that help the fan experience be so great at DragonCon is something that I've never heard of any other convention doing, and that's that none of the media guests who are there, none of the guests at all, are being paid by DragonCon.
It's amazing.
DragonCon does not pay appearance fees. So whatever, what Brent Spiner is going to make next weekend is what he's going to make on the Walk of Fame. And the Walk of Fame is the area where the guests have tables and they sign their autographs.
Okay.
So what that does is that it encourages those guests to be available to the fans by being on the Walk of Fame, because that's where they're going to make their money over the weekend.
Right.
And built into their contracts for the convention, this is for almost everybody, is that every day that they're listed as being in attendance, they must do at least one panel. So if somebody's there all 4 days, they're going to do a panel each day. And the only exception that I'm aware of that DragonCon has made for that policy is for Nichelle Nichols, and it was shortly after she left the hospital.
Right.
So it was for health reasons.
Yeah. So having said that, it sounds like the guests would then set their own prices for things like autographs and photo ops.
Yes and no. If at the tables, a lot of the celebrities and the guests have this much for an autograph, this much for a selfie, this much for signing your item or our item. But some of the guests are with a photography site, a professional photography site, which has become very popular at a lot of the conventions.
Right.
Those celebrities usually have a sign at their table saying no pictures, because that's part of the contract. If you want a picture with them, you have to do it through the professionals.
Okay.
They'll be happy to sign the picture when you bring it to them later.
Right.
Okay.
But no snaps at the table.
Okay. And so that photo you would buy either like through DragonCon's website or at a photo op booth or something.
There is a link to purchase them in advance, but you can also do it at a booth at the con. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, they're actually not affiliated with they're affiliated with the con in that they're there, but they're not part of the con like directory or anything.
Okay. Yeah. Do you guys happen to know with this setup, is it the kind where you go, you take the photo, and then you get your photo like 5 minutes later and walk away with it? Awesome. Yes.
Cool.
Although it is the walk up, take your picture, move on. There's no time to talk to the person.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Walk of Fame being the place where all of the people have their tables and you can walk up, either get a picture or not. Can we talk a little bit about how that area is set up and what people can expect when they go there and navigate around? Is it like a typical convention table setup, or is there anything special people would need to know?
Yeah, it's actually very similar to the way that the STLV vendors room is set up.
Okay.
So you've got, the outer perimeter and then different rows and islands of tables. And there will be a map and a listing, of course, entering the room. And yeah, there's no charge to enter the room. There is no charge to speak to the guest. So if there is not a long line, you can just go up and say hi and talk to them. Cool. And they will be, setting their own prices for whatever is available in the Walk of Fame, which is different for everybody.
Usually it's, like she said, there's the outer ring and usually there's 2 inner rings, and they have a predefined lining area in front of each guest that usually will do. And if it's someone that's really, really popular, it'll have, okay, this is the line in front of the table. Then it picks up over here, and then the overflow from that picks up over here. So you may see a line and think, oh, there's only like 20 people in line to see that person, and then realize that it's, now, mind you, others, there is only 10 people in front of them. So, yay. Like, I got really lucky 3 years ago. I got to there just as the place was about to close for the night, and John Barrowman had 6 people in front of him.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, gimme.
So the Walk of Fame has specific hours. It's not 24 hours like the rest of the con, I would assume, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. It usually opens up around 9 or 10 and closes usually about 6:30.
6 or 7, yeah.
So do the celebs set their own hours aside from the times they're doing professional ops, or are they always available there?
They are available there. Yeah, they do set their own schedule. Some of them will, write out their schedule and say, this is when I'm going to be back if they're not there. But like I said, because that's where they're making money for the weekend, as long as they're not on a panel, taking a bathroom break, or eating or in a photo op, they're pretty much going to be at their table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as Sue said, if all you want to do is come up and talk to them, this is the place to do it. I've done that with several guests. You just go up, say hi. You make it brief if there's like 60 people behind you breathing down your neck. But still, if you want a chance to talk to them, this is the where to do it. And depending on who they are, the prices will range anywhere from $20 to $120.
Yep.
Okay.
It really depends on who it is.
2 important things to note as well about the Walk of Fame is that there is no photography allowed. The only exception is if you are purchasing the selfie that some of the guests offer.
Right.
And if DragonCon volunteers or DragonCon security even sees a camera out, you can get removed from the Walk of Fame.
Oh, wow.
They're very serious about candid photography. And there is also, this is, I guess, especially for podcasters, you cannot ask for interviews on the Walk of Fame.
Oh, wow.
So while at other conventions you can walk up to somebody and say, hey, can I get 5 minutes with you? Not allowed. All interviews have to go through the media relations team.
Yes, and be approved in advance.
Yep.
They will sometimes do if you're asked, and some will offer, pay $15 for a voicemail message, but that's the extent of it.
Okay.
Like, hi, you've reached my phone. That level.
Yeah.
So hearing some of so you said like 20 or 30 to up to $120. Can we quickly talk about the cash versus credit card situation? Is this pretty much like a regular convention where it's cash only at these tables, or?
I've seen more and more guests in the last years have things like Square.
Okay.
But you can't be certain. So cash is always a good idea.
Yeah. Everybody always takes cash. The other thing is the ones who will take Square, sometimes the reception, which is also something else we should talk about. The cell reception or Wi-Fi reception can be bad. So you may go in expecting to use the Square and end up having to take cash anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So is there an ATM situation out there? Is this one of those things where they're going to get emptied out quick?
They're going to get emptied out by Saturday morning, and they're not going to get refilled till Tuesday.
Okay, so bring cash, people.
Yep.
If you don't bring it, get it as soon as you arrive, either in the airport ATM, or find one quickly.
Yep.
So, and I'm assuming the withdrawal fees are pretty good out there, pretty egregious.
Yeah, make sure you hit your own bank if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good advice. So anything else about the Walk of Fame people should know? Okay.
Yeah, just 90% of the time, because the guest is there of their own volition and they're making the money, they're usually very friendly, and most of them mean it. And you can have some great, wonderful conversations with people, provided there's not 60 people waiting to talk to them. I had a wonderful conversation with Doug Bradley. I got to talk to Robin Lord Taylor for a few minutes one year. It's really, it depends on the time of day you go too, because sometimes, like I said, you get there and there's nobody there, and then you come back 10 minutes later and the line is, oh my God.
Yeah.
Everybody realized Whitmith Miller's here now.
And certainly, like, the bigger the star, I assume the more difficult it is.
Yes. Usually the more difficult and the more costly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I saw that Stan Lee's going to be there, and then they've got like the usual get the Stan Lee package for $300.
Yep. Yeah. Some of the celebrities like Stan and one or two others do come with their own, signing entourage, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah. He won't be in the Walk of Fame. Neither will William Shatner.
Okay.
They are doing separate purchasable signings.
Right. Like a VIP package, I think.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah, but that also gets you like an authentication card if you want to buy that sort of thing.
And it's usually, fewer than 5 guests a year who would fall into that category.
Yeah.
But it's usually someone like Stan or Shatner.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if someone's going to this thing for the first time, are there any resources on site that are there to help people? I know you said there's a lot of volunteers. Is there places that people can go if they wind up needing extra help getting around or information on getting places or finding things?
For sure. So like I said, if you're there Thursday night, the newbies group does the walking tours and the Q&A, and then the Q&A again Friday morning, just to give as much information as we possibly can. But during the convention, there is an information booth in every hotel and in both buildings of the America's Mart. You can grab any volunteer. You're encouraged to do so. All of the volunteers wear the same color lanyard with their badge, so they should be easy to spot. This year, that color is purple.
Yay!
And and there is a newsletter, I guess you can call it, called the Daily Dragon, that releases with a bunch of schedule updates, information, sometimes interviews that are being done during the convention. So they're trying to disseminate information as much as they can.
Yeah, which is why I was saying earlier that the schedule is always in motion, because you never know when someone's going to cancel or something has to be changed or moved. So look for that Daily Dragon. What we like to say in our track room is nothing has happened. You don't know, nothing has happened until it's happened.
And that the Daily Dragon is in the app.
Yes.
I don't know if this would be a good time to talk about the app, but having never been, I'm just obsessed with this app because it's really awesome. But yeah, there's a little link here to Daily Dragon that you can go and it pops in. Since you guys have been, and this app has been around for some time, do they directly do, if a guest their photo op time changes, do you get that as a notification in this app?
Not for photo ops, because that is run through that outside company.
Right.
That I believe you might get an email from them.
Okay.
And I don't think if a panel you marked changes, I don't think you get a notification, but it does change on your schedule in the app.
Right. Okay. That's
but yeah, there's so many ways to search through this app. You can search by guest, you can search by track, you can search by time, you can kind of search by location. There are maps for every hotel. If you go into a map and tap on a room, it'll bring up the schedule just for that room for the entire weekend. So there's a lot of functionality that's in there. Some of it's a little bit hidden or expert level, but there's a lot there. There are friend codes, so you can share those with your friends and be linked in the app. You can choose whether or not to share your schedule with each of those friends.
okay.
You can add your own personal events. So one thing that I like to do is schedule my lunch, because if I don't schedule my lunch, I won't eat.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really good functionality in the app. The main thing I use it for, which I think most people are going to use it for, is you go into the events, find the stuff you're interested in, and when you choose it, it will put it on your schedule, and then you can go on my schedule and look and see, okay, here's what I'm doing now, here's what I'm doing now later. And the other thing I really love about that is I've gone in, I've got my day set up, I can make my plan. But again, I like the way if you have two things the same time, it puts them both at that same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to dig for it.
It looks like a Google Calendar, basically.
Mm-hmm. But they've also got a photo gallery. They've got, like Sue said, they've got the maps. If there's only one particular guest you're interested in, you can look under guests, find that person, and it will tell you everything they're on.
Yeah, and then it's got a little local places app,
Yes.
and it's got courtesy shuttle information, and then offsite events. So there's an event at the aquarium.
Yes, which is very popular, especially with the BioShock cosplayers.
And it's okay. So so that's something that you have to buy an extra ticket for.
Yeah, that is an additional admission cost.
Okay, and then Center for Puppetry Arts. That's kind of fun. Ooh,
Oh,
new
this-
special. Jim Henson's Labyrinth. Ooh.
Yeah,
Yes.
so the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta is, I think it's the largest museum for puppetry in the country, maybe the world.
Wow.
And the director of DragonCon's puppetry track is also one of the head honchos at the center. And last year, for the anniversary of Labyrinth, they did a fundraising ball the night before DragonCon, and it was so popular that they brought it back again this year.
Awesome.
And it has become a huge fundraising event for them, and it's so great. They have a Labyrinth exhibit happening right now at the center, and it is one of the things that I now go and visit them, every year on Thursday morning before convention stuff starts kicking off. So even if you're not coming to DragonCon, but you'll be in Atlanta, go to the Center for Puppetry Arts.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. It's wonderful to see. Oh wow, Bowie is a very tiny man. They've got his costume there. But if you go with your DragonCon badge, you get a discount.
Oh,
Cool. That's good to know.
Yeah, if you have, I think it even lasts for a couple days after the convention, but starting Thursday, if you have your badge with you, you can get admission for, I think it's just $5.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's actually all the way through the end of the month.
See, there you go.
So if you're in it, so if you live in Atlanta, there's no reason not to go if you've gone to DragonCon.
Yeah. Go to it. I would go,
I would love
but
to
I'm
go.
in Colorado, so I also noticed here it's got the parade starting location, staging area, and just a quick aside because we've talked about the parade so much. What exactly is in the parade? Is it floats? Is it just people in cosplay? Is it celebrities?
Yes.
The DragonCon parade is, no joke, the largest parade in Atlanta every year.
wow. That sounds awesome.
It is. And so yeah, different, sometimes tracks enter something. Last year, the puppetry track, again for the Labyrinth anniversary, made together a giant puppet of the worm
Oh, wow.
that sits on the wall, and they puppeteered the giant puppet all the way through the parade route. Some of the local, like the local haunted house usually has a float. There are different theme groups. I think this year there's going to be a Handmaid's Tale group.
Ooh.
So I hope they're planning to walk just side by side right down the
Yeah.
road. And usually the parade ends with the Star Wars group. So the very last thing you see in the DragonCon parade is, tens, if not hundreds, of stormtroopers marching down Peachtree Street in Atlanta.
That's cool.
Yeah,
So
there's
it sounds
troopers, there's Emperor, there's Invaders, there are Ghostbusters. You will see at least one, if not two, Ectomobiles.
Nice.
There's a G.I. Joe cosplay group. Georgia's Finest is the local group. Hey, Noel. We usually have, there's one guy who does one of the vehicles from the bad guys called the Dreadnoks. And so there's this giant tricked out Mad Max looking truck thing. There's also a Mad Max group last year. I don't know if there's going to be one this year, but if there's a fandom, usually they're part of the group. They're part of the parade somewhere.
Is that a volunteer thing? Can you get in on that if you were part of a group or you had a group of your own? Could you get in on that for next year's con or be part of the parade?
Yes,
Oh,
you just
cool.
have to register early because they do, again, like they have to cap it, unfortunately.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, any attendee, if they register early enough, can be part of the parade.
Oh, cool.
I think my favorite one from previous years was the Jane Book and Gun Club, and they were all Jane Eyres, but in Jane from Firefly hats.
That's awesome.
It sounds like this is kind of one of the events not to miss of DragonCon. Like, if you're going to go, you have to go to this.
That question, like, what is the can't miss event, is the question that I hate the most, to be honest with you, because there's so much going on at DragonCon. What I can't miss might be totally different from what somebody else can't miss.
Yep.
But if for your first time going, if you really want that, like, what is DragonCon experience, and you're forcing me to pick something, it would be the parade.
Yeah. And if you can, try to find a really good vantage point, either get there early enough to get on the edge of the sidewalk or there are a few different parking decks that you might be able to get up onto a higher level so you can look down on it. Some of the hotels, if you're on that side of the street, watch it from your hotel room. You'll be air conditioned.
I've had a lovely parade view the last few years.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. So cool.
And the one other thing I want to mention about the app out of my own self-interest is also when you pull up the individual panels, any panel you attend, when you've got it in the app, there's one little icon that looks like a clipboard for rating the panel.
Oh,
Nice.
So, and this is highly paid attention to by both the head honchos of DragonCon and the track runners like myself. And so after, usually about a month or two after the convention, they start compiling that data. We get it fairly early in the year, so we can look at, okay, what worked, what didn't, what comments, and please put comments. You know, and this was not good, or I'm saying it the polite way without profanity, is not a helpful comment. And you can rate it from 1 to 5 stars. They usually have it divided into different categories of, you know, was it 1 to 5 stars for the number of people, or how informative it was, or, you know, what, it's all broken down. And it does absolutely influence the convention in the future. My personal track, this American Sci-Fi Classics track, we got upgraded to a bigger room last year because we had more attendees and more votes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, I really love how they take that feedback and listen to it. It's just
Benefits of the fan-run convention.
yeah.
Yes.
Start the list. Seriously. Again, we need to do our Shorely podcast convention. We're going to take all this advice and insight.
In the ultimate convention.
Guys, so we talked about a lot of stuff, and I remember hearing the advice about making sure you plan your meals. And I know this kind of more belong with some of the general advice at the beginning, but I know we didn't really talk much about dining options and food options for people who have never been before. I mean, it could be pretty daunting, I would imagine, to be at a giant con like that and try to make your way around and find places to eat. Do you guys have any advice on how people can stay healthy and make sure they're eating and find some places that might provide a reasonable meals at decent prices? Or
Absolutely.
Cool.
So the 3 main hotels, we say main because they were the first 3 out of the 5, are right next to the Peachtree Center Mall. The Peachtree Center Mall has a CVS inside, which is where I recommend people go and stock up on things for the room. Peanut butter bread, snacks, soda, whatever you want to have in your room. But they also have a great food court that's open all weekend and has great hours.
Cool.
So I would say you can get a nutritiously balanced, large portioned meal for under $10.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, if I can personally throw out a shout out to individual places in the mall, there's the Farmer's Basket, which has actual vegetables. And has a really good chicken and really good sweet tea. And then there's, I believe it's pronounced Avita, which is a Greek style place, Middle Eastern. And it's some of the best food you'll have. And the guy there who runs it is one of the most lovely human beings I've ever met. And he loves the convention and he loves everybody who comes. He came here from the Middle East, founded this place with his mom. And it's someplace I try to hit every year, at least once. And if you're a fan of sushi, there's a great sushi all-you-can-eat buffet thing called Yummy Yummy, which is really good. But they also have a Dairy Queen, so if you just need a hot dog.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you mentioning the healthy stuff, because I mean, as people who go to conventions and wind up eating junk for an entire week, it's good to know that there's some healthy options available.
Oh, for sure. And that is, for a lot of people, DragonCon is unlike any other convention that they've attended simply because it doesn't close.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at 6 o'clock, you don't go home and eat a good dinner and go to sleep. You just keep going. One of the things that we recommend to newbies a lot is what we call the 6-2-1 rule, which is that in any 24-hour period at DragonCon, you should get 6 hours of sleep, preferably uninterrupted, 2 full meals, including leafy greens and some kind of protein, and 1 shower with soap and running water.
Excellent advice.
And often with the caveat that, or caveats, that Axe body spray does not count as a shower. And
Definitely not.
that while some veterans can do DragonCon on like 421 or even 321, we really recommend it for first timers to try and get at least 6 hours of sleep.
And some of us who aren't as young as we used to be.
No, yeah, believe me, it's been hitting me harder and harder the last few years. And I think Heather and I both just suffered those problems at this last SCLV a few weeks ago, where we went too hard the first couple of days, and you really wind up paying for it. And I would imagine being out in the heat as much as you are in DragonCon, you're going to be paying for it a lot sooner if you're not getting enough rest and food and water.
For sure.
Although, as we said, the main 3 hotels and the Peachtree Center are all interconnected with habit trails,
Nice.
as we call them. So you do not actually have to go outside unless you're going to either the Dealer's Room, the Westin, or the Sheraton, which are the 2 outlier hotels. And even then, it's not too bad going to the Sheraton if you come out one particular place and it's just a straight shot 1 block away. Getting to the Westin is always a pain because there's no way to do it without going uphill. It's not a steep hill, but it's a long, gradual hill. So it will grind you if you're not ready for it.
Yeah, that brings up accessibility. If people are thinking of coming to the convention and they have disabilities, is there anything that they should know or any special ways to get around that might help them?
So DragonCon's disability services is some of the best I've ever seen at any convention. There are several different, I should back up. They're set up outside of registration. So they're right there, and you can go talk to them after you get your badge, or in some cases, tell them a reason why you're unable to go get your badge, and they'll set you up and do your registration right there. And they will ask you, if you go up to them seeing if you're eligible for accommodation, they ask you, to comply with ADA. If they can ask you about the kind of accommodations you need, and then they will ask you a couple questions and determine what they can offer. And there are a few different stickers, really, that they put on your badge. There is a Sightline sticker, which guarantees, or which gets you seating close to the stage or a screen. So it doesn't guarantee front row seating. It's not preference, it's an accommodation. There is one for wheelchair locations, wheelchair or scooter. There is one for seat in line end of row. So people who can't stand for long periods in line, there's a section where they can sit and wait for the panel to begin. And then you get a seat on the end of the row if you have, a knee problem or a back problem. And different things like that. So they make sure that everyone is getting what they need to enjoy the convention, but that nobody's getting any kind of special treatment.
Yeah. I also have to stress this. They don't ask for any type of paperwork. You're on an honor system, but they also want you, if you think, there are a lot of people that won't get it because they don't think they need it. They stress that if you have something which may cause you impairment to enjoy the convention, please come to them. I have a friend who, we were just talking about this 2 weeks ago. She went, she had just had something done with her shoulder, and she was like, no, I'll be fine. I don't need it. And she kept getting where she was sit, because of the way she had to sit, people kept bumping into her, bumping into the shoulder, causing her pain. When she could have just gone, got the sticker, they would have put her in the end of row so no one would bump into her. So myself personally, I have a bad back. I can't really stand up for more than 15, 20 minutes because one of my vertebrae isn't complete. So I get the end of line and seating in line. And so like at the Walk of Fame, where there's this 90-person line to get to see somebody, they will actually bring you a chair and you can sit and hold your place in line.
That's awesome.
Great.
Even for somebody like me with fibromyalgia, who fortunately it's not as debilitating for me as it is for other people, but with a convention like this where you're just constantly going and going, I don't think about the fact that I'm not, I'm on my feet too much. I'm not getting enough rest. And so stuff like that can cause me to have a fibromyalgia flare. So I think even for me, it would be great to just go to them and say, this is my situation. What advice do you have? And see where that takes me, because I can tell you, like, same situation. If I'm standing all day, I would benefit highly from having a chair to sit in, even if 30 minutes could save me from having a flare. So that's really awesome. That just That makes me very happy to hear
Yeah.
that you're so invested and encourage that.
I was also going to say a lot of the hotel lobbies also have chairs that are out with the disability sign on them for people like your situation of mine, where if you need to sit down for a minute, this chair is always open to somebody with the sticker.
That's great.
Oh, great.
The difficult thing is that because somebody in a wheelchair or a scooter or even with crutches needs to take an elevator and it is so crowded, that is really where it just takes longer to get anywhere. And unfortunately, there are always some people who are going to push themselves onto the elevator first when it finally comes, or not let somebody who really needs that service to use it. And it can often take somebody with a mobility impairment a lot longer to get different places. So one of the things I always encourage the newbies in the newbie group is, if you can take the stairs, if you can take the elevator, please do it. If you decide you want to take the elevator anyway, I think I said escalator last time, right? If you can take the stairs, if you can take the escalator, do it. If you do decide to take the elevator, be considerate of the people around you. Let people who need it use it first. And also remember that not all disabilities are visible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, sometimes you do have to go, hey, make room for the wheelchair or the scooter or whatever. And 90% of the time, people will make the room for them.
That's
You
great.
know.
Standard con etiquette applies, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah.
but especially like I said, I can't stress this enough. If you think you need it, or you might need it, or might possibly need it, go talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know a few people, actually myself included, who usually end up with a seat in line end of row sticker who don't always need it. I also have a back issue, but it's worse some days than others.
Yeah.
So for me, if I need it, if I'm hurting, I will use my seat in line end of row. If I don't, I just put myself on the end of the line.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of other things, it's a bit of an honor system. I don't have to do that. I might as well give that seat when I don't need it to somebody who does.
Yeah, I'd be in a similar situation. I can't predict when I'm going to have a flare.
Yeah.
So, again, it's better off to have that sticker and know that you can use it if needed. But otherwise, I'd be in the same boat where I would need it. And so I think that's good advice to send out to everybody.
Yeah. And all the volunteers, usually all you have to do is just show them your badge with the sticker, and it's no questions asked. Oh, here, have your seat. Oh, here, let me get you a thing. Let me help you out.
However, if they do see somebody they suspect of abusing it, they will look into the situation.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, and the one other thing about the sticker is usually not for the end of line, end of row, but others, you are allowed a handler, for lack of a better term. I know there's a better term for it, but an
Companion.
assistant. That's it. Who falls under your sticker with you, to help you out.
That's great. It's just phenomenal. Like you don't see this kind of support at a lot of conventions. So it just makes me very happy.
Fan run
Come to
makes
DragonCon.
Yeah, I might have to, guys.
A lot of the things that exist at DragonCon are because a fan said, hey, why don't we do this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the puppetry track, which has some of the biggest events every year, started a few years ago because somebody made like puppet bumpers for DragonConTV, and they were a huge hit. Mm-hmm. So the next year, Bo, the director of puppetry track, pitched a puppet slam, a late night puppet slam. No. That had a line down the block and around the corner. It was so popular. That's what got them the track. So as long as there's interest, you can find it. You can create it. You can create a track for it.
Yes.
I think it goes to show that, the volunteers, the fans involved in creating the convention, they're passionate about it. So when that passion is a foundation, that opens up doors for fan suggestions and accommodations. And that's something that we really don't see with other, corporate run conventions.
For sure.
Yeah, we're all doing this because we love it. Like for speaking for myself and Joe, we started out as just people coming to the convention. Then we started as volunteers on this track and others. And then when the gentleman who created the track we run, the classics track plug, had to retire because of medical issues, we were like, we can do this, and we took over.
So speaking of things like the puppetry and after hours events, I guess is what I'm going for here. I've heard from some friends that, even though the convention is kind of 24 hours, that as far as unofficial events like group gatherings at bars, I guess that was specifically my friend brought up the bars. So would you tell us a little bit about like the nightlife? I know you mentioned the different parties, dance parties and gatherings. Just kind of give us a basic rundown of what goes on outside of the panels and stuff like that.
Yeah, so a lot of tracks are going to have dances or parties, and sometimes there are bartenders, sometimes they aren't. They might go a couple hours, but there are other events as well. Project Cosplay, which is what you probably think it is, happens. That's a late night panel. I think it starts around midnight. So there are teams and they're given a pile of stuff and they have to make a cosplay out of it in 40 minutes.
Wow.
There is kilt blowing, also probably what you think it is, late night panel. There's also the science track does an event every year called Solve for X, and it is a science variety show.
Ooh.
And one of my favorite acts is when they give scientists have to present a PowerPoint that they've never seen before. And it's just, it's a weird little comedy show.
That's awesome.
There are often, BritTrack does late night panels that are mature content. So I think one this year is gay and trans themes in Doctor Who.
Oh my gosh.
Another is women in Doctor Who. So that late night programming, really anything after about 8 p.m., which we call Watershed, is going to be mature programming. There is fanfic programming. There are fanfic readings. There's filking. There's anything you could imagine.
Yeah, there's a drum circle.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it started out outside around one of the hotel pools, and it got loud enough that they were like, we have to put it in a room because everybody who sleeps on that side of the hotel is complaining.
Yeah. And with a lot of these events, so are these stuff that you'll find on that the schedule in the app, or is it again social media group?
If it is run by a track, it's like an official event, it's going to be in the app.
Yeah, almost all the parties are in the app.
Yeah, a meetup or a private party or an individual group party, that's going to be something you'd have to find on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing about the DragonCon nightlife is all the hotels have their own bar.
Right.
And there will be people at the bar pretty much until they close the bar. And this is a great place to hang out, meet people, see cosplay, because this is where, in all the hotel lobbies is where the people wander around in the costumes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can plant yourself at one of these bars and just watch the con go past.
Nice.
Yep.
Or you can go from hotel to hotel and look at all the different ones. And you don't know what you're going to find. Have you ever heard of the Hip Hop Trooper?
No.
Okay, the Hip Hop Trooper is a guy he's a stormtrooper, but his armor is completely red with the Adidas stripe and logo, and he has a giant boom box, and he does hip hop music. And he started out just doing it on his own as a gag, and now he's actually got an action figure. He's with the 501st.
Nice.
And literally one year I wandered into the Hilton lobby, and he had set down his boom box, and there was a dance off going off, a cosplay dance off. No, it wasn't scheduled. It wasn't planned. It just happened.
That's awesome.
And that's the kind of things that'll happen. And also, if you hang out at the bars, you may run into writers. You will run into celebrities. I have run into the guy who played Glenn twice. I ran into Grant and Mahara dressed up as Glenn. I ran into Daryl Dixon and one of the Walking Dead writers the first year was on and was talking to him, and I was like, they were like, he's like, well, you might not like me. We're gonna kill people. I'm like, I've read the comic. I know people die. So it just depends on when you hit it and where you go. But that is a large chunk of the DragonCon nightlife is just wandering around in the lobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all my Facebook photos of the cons are from the lobby.
Awesome. So I guess we're getting kind of close to the end of our time together tonight, and I think this has been a fantastic beginners episode to discuss DragonCon. So do we have any final advice or things that people should know before they go to DragonCon? Sue, we'll start with you.
Well, since this is the Shore Leave podcast, just really quickly, I want to talk about some specifics about the Trek Track.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And the track director for Trek Track is actually Garrett Wang.
Nice.
So this is somebody who used to be a guest who loved this convention. And when the opportunity arose, when the track needed a new director, he volunteered. So you've got, a Trek actor running this track
So awesome.
and doing that programming. And he really does do it. He goes to the directors meetings and does the work for it. It's not just a figurehead sort of thing. So, it tends to be that Trek Track does not have as heavy programming as some other tracks. This year, that's not quite the case. There are definitely a few sessions where there are multiple things going on at the same time. But as you'd expect, this year is very TNG heavy. So I think right now all of the main cast has been confirmed except for Patrick Stewart and LeVar Burton.
Wow.
And there is a TNG panel every day of the convention. So if you miss it on Friday, you can go on Saturday and so on. So there's some really great programming there, and they're always looking to talk about Trek in a new and different way. Last year there was a great panel on the history of fan fiction. And there was also one on the animated series. And this year I know there obviously there's going to be a lot of Discovery speculation because it will not have aired yet. But also they're diving into the book series and the extended universe for Star Trek. So there's a lot going on. Like I said, you can attend a full convention in just one track.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's awesome.
So, Gary, any closing advice from you for people?
I would like to mention one thing we haven't touched on, which is also the live music. There are about 20 different bands that will be performing, and I'm talking like not only Filk, but I'm talking like Bella Morte, I think, is there this year. I know Ego Likeness is there for sure. I know the Crux Shadows are going to be there for sure because they're there every year. Voltaire is going to be there. Valentine Wolf. If you're into geek music, there's going to be someone there for you, or you're going to find somebody new. And every day there's, in one hotel, they have what they call the concourse, where they set all the music acts up, and all day there are live, usually acoustic performances, and then at night, actual live electronic performances.
Wow.
And you will discover and see some great music.
Excellent.
So there's something there for everybody.
It's awesome. I had no idea that existed, so that's really great.
Yeah, it's great. You can spend most of your con money on CDs if you want.
Yep.
And if I could pimp my own
Or
track,
download codes.
or download codes.
Yes. Please talk about your track too. Yeah.
Our track is, and this is the other thing I want to mention we didn't really talk about, there are two different types of panels. There's the celebrity panels, where it's what you expect. It's all what you see at a normal convention. There's everybody up on the stage talking about the show, talking about what they're doing. And then there are the fan panels. Sometimes there's a celebrity or a guest there. Sometimes, most of the time there isn't, but they're informed people. Like this year on the Classics track, we're doing a look back at the anniversary of the Highlander, the TV series. One of the people who's going to be on the track, Dr. Stephen Vigay, did sword training with the man who did the sword training work for the show.
All right.
Wow.
We're airing the Star Wars holiday special.
Oh, God.
For charity.
Oh, okay, it's a good.
We didn't even talk about charity.
Oh, God, that's right. The special, every year DragonCon does a charity event or picks a charity to support. And they actually will donation match up to a certain amount. This year, the charity is the Special Olympics.
And the donation match is dollar for dollar up to $100,000.
Wow, that's awesome.
And there hasn't been a year that I can think of where they haven't hit the max.
Well, the max previously until this year was 50, and now it's 100,000.
Wow.
But yeah, I think it's brilliant. They're airing the Star Wars Christmas special, and in order to get out of the room, you have to donate to charity.
Yes. We will have a short panel, and then we are going to lock the doors.
Wow.
Obviously, legally, we can't keep you, but the only way you get a special thing is to donate to charity, and we will shame you if you don't donate. And the earlier in the showing, the more expensive it is. The first 10 minutes, it's $20. So yes, and it's a wonderful little. We have buttons, and we have a wonderful little postcard, which is perfect for signing since both Chewbacca actors are there this year.
Oh, cool.
And there are charity events throughout the convention. Lots of the tracks do them. There's a charity auction. There's also a blood drive, which I want to say is the largest in the country, but I'm not positive on that.
Oh, it's the
One
largest
of,
in the
for sure.
southeast.
That's definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enough blood to make a vampire blush.
All right. So, guys, it's been awesome having you guys in here. I feel like I've been to DragonCon now after talking to you about this. So I'm actually, I might look into going next year. I've been thinking about going for a while. And like I said, I have a friend of mine that I work with who's gone multiple times. So I think I'm prepared to go. What about you, Heather? You think you're ready for it?
Yeah, I just need to figure out the timing and the finances and find a place to sleep.
Do the streaming membership this year or the virtual membership this year and just get a taste.
That's a good call.
Yeah, that's just such a great option.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so impressed. Like, I had very little knowledge of DragonCon, very basic knowledge, and I'm really just blown away at this point. And really, it just comes down to the fact that it's a fan-run convention. I see what fan passion creates, and the fact that this is just such a large convention and continues to grow and thrive just speaks so highly of how amazing it is. So thank you both for sharing. I'm pumped. Like, I want to go next year.
Absolutely.
Please do. Yeah, please come. We would love to have you. I'll put you on panels. I guarantee it.
Awesome.
Yay.
Very cool. All right. So in closing, again, thanks for you guys for coming on. And where can people find you online if they want to talk to you? Sue, where would you be online?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter. My username is Spaltor. That's Spaltor. And my DragonCon panel schedule is posted on the blog at womenatwarp.com.
Very cool. And Gary, where can people find you online?
You can find me on the Twitter as @Gary_Mitchel, Mitchell with 1 L. And yes, it's my real name. It hasn't come up yet. Yes, it's not a pen name. You can also find us on Facebook at the DragonCon American Sci-Fi Classics track. We are putting parts of the schedule up because it can change. We're not going to put the full schedule up, but anything you want to find out, and we do stuff year round. We keep that Facebook group going.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Heather, where can people find you?
I am LLA Posper on Twitter.
So, and I am Warp Factor Jeff on Twitter. You can find our show at shoreleavepodcast.com and on facebook.com/shoreleavepodcast. And we are at shoreleave on Twitter. So thanks again, Sue and Gary, for being here tonight to talk about DragonCon.
Thank you guys so much.
All right. And we'll see you guys next time on Shore Leave. Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.